Hello, my friend. I am doing a little video on Irvin Yalom's view of existential freedom in my series on the publication of my new book, Beginning to Live the Art of Existential Freedom. Irvin Yalom, who is a contemporary psychiatrist, existential therapist and very well-known author who has done a lot for letting people know about existential ways of working, had his own way of looking at existential freedom. And as you will see, this was mainly based in the work of his teachers such as Paul Tillich, Rollo May, and also Erich Fromm to some extent. But there is also a definite Sartrean influence in Yalom's work. So he defines freedom as one of the four ultimate concerns. Now, the idea of the ultimate concerns comes from Jaspers and Tillich, but they had different ones, and as you know, for Jaspers they were quite different to Yalom's ones, but this is more Tillich's way of looking at things. So for Irv Yalom, those four ultimate concerns that he felt all human beings are preoccupied with are death, we all agree on that, isolation, so that's about your social relationships, and then he has freedom as a fear that we all have. This comes very much from Fromm's work on freedom. And fourthly, meaninglessness, very much aligned with Frankl too there. So his take on freedom is utterly psychological. He views it as the terrifying realization that we are the unconditional authors of our own lives. And therefore freedom becomes synonymous with authorship of our life. And Yalom, like many others, points out that while people often think of freedom as liberty, as freedom from something, it's important to focus on freedom as a responsibility. We've heard it over and over again with those recent contributors. Frankl in particular, but also Fromm. To be free, then, is to realize that you are the one who has designed your life, your patterns, and even your problems. And this is where he takes a step beyond others. So he began to look at the problems people have in their lives at having been shaped by the individual. And he also argues that the world is a stage on which we have performed and we have written the script of the play ourselves, and that is what we should therefore take responsibility for. This is clearly quite an extreme view and quite frightening to many people. It is usually good for people to begin to see that they have the capacity to respond differently, but to actually take responsibility for their past suffering is often something people balk at. So it means there is no ground beneath your feet, as it were. It's all up to you. You're responsible for your successes, but also for your failures and your misery. I take the view that although in principle we are responsible for those things, in practice, those things happen because we have not realized we are responsible and can take authorship of our lives. So that's where Yalom and I have a slightly different view of the situation. So Yalom was very good at looking into this in detail, and he identified lots of ways in which people try to escape the weight of their freedom. So when you feel stuck, you are probably using these, and he calls them existential defense mechanisms. So there's quite a bit of psychoanalytic influence in his work as well. Then he speaks about displacement, to blame someone else, your boss, your spouse, your system, for the situation you're in, denying your responsibility, treating your behavior as an irresistible impulse or a medical symptom you can't control. It's quite challenging, Yalom there. And finally, loss of control, entering into a state of victimhood where you feel the world is happening to you, things are being done to you, and there is nothing you can do about it. So he's quite tough on all of that. It's a tough love method, Yalom therapy. And he then also breaks down freedom, the act of freedom, into two distinct phases. To get out of all these defense mechanisms, you need to learn to wish again, and you also need to learn to decide again. So Yalom says, wishing is how freedom starts. Freedom begins with desire. But many people are wish blocked, and that's a very true observation, I think. They don't know what they want, or they stifle their desires to please others or for various other reasons as well. So the wishing and bringing back the wishing in a person's life is an important access road to them finding freedom and responsibility again, which makes the second one possible, which is deciding, because that is, he says, the bridge between the wish and the action. Deciding is difficult because every yes is a no to thousands of other possibilities, as we've seen with Sartre. Not to choose is also a choice, and when you do choose, then you're unchoosing many, many other things. So Yalom points out that deciding involves this kind of exclusion. So you have to be quite firm when you decide. You have to firmly know you opt for this and you exclude all the rest. It's about commitment. To choose one path is to kill off all other paths. And that reminds you of your finitude, and that gives you a feeling of anxiety, and that's very difficult to face up to. So in a therapeutic sense, Yalom uses freedom all the time to empower his clients, or his patients as he calls them. He believes that once a person accepts that they have constituted their own distress, they realize they also have the power to unconstitute it, as it were. And he asks his patients, how did you create this situation for yourself? Pushing them towards taking responsibility. He does not mean to blame the victim. He means to restore the person's agency, the belief that they are an active player in their own story rather than a helpless observer. So you can see that Yalom truly believes in the existential idea that we are our choices and become what we have chosen to be. And while we can't be 100% responsible all the time, we nevertheless need to become aware of how we structure our reality.